Welcome to Fire Up Wisconsin. We're talking Wisconsin sports. We're talking about the teams that we really need to fire them up today. And with joining me today is Eric Katz. Eric, introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Eric Katz. I currently live in Milwaukee. Live about 10 minutes from beautiful American Family Field, and about an hour-ish or so away from Camp Randall Stadium, as well as a few minutes away from pretty much every Milwaukee pro sports team.
Okay, and then we have Scott. Introduce yourself, Scott, please.
The Motor City Mad Mouth Candy and the founder of the South Florida Tribune. That's all you need to know. And you know what? I'm delighted that you're the lead person on this particular show. I could see that you and Robert Redford have something in common. You're both a natural. So I'm delighted that you and Eric are going to take complete control of this show. And I know you guys are going to do unbelievable things with it. So I am the owner and CEO of the South Florida Tribune, Motor City Mad Mouth, and take a very active role on the broadcast side.
Awesome. Well, I'm your host tonight. My name is Candy Ebling, and I grew up in Wisconsin. All of my sports teams, near and dear to my heart, happen to be all of Wisconsin teams. I now live in South Florida. I work for the South Florida Tribune, do all kinds of things on broadcast side and on the written side. So you can find us at www.southfloridatribune.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, YouTube South Florida Tribune, and please hit subscribe. We have a lot of shows on there that you can enjoy. One of them being Fire Up Wisconsin. We have Fire Up Florida, Fire Up Michigan, Fire Up baseball show, Inside the Pigskin. Come join, see all the different shows we have to offer. But tonight we are going to talk to my sports teams, my Wisconsin. So we are going to start out. We're going to talk about the season that is starting to wind down. So let's talk about our Brewers, Mr. Eric Katz, since you live so close to the Brewers. American family.
Well, the deal with the Brewers is, number one, it's been the same as it was last year, except this time the pitching got hurt, and then it all just kind of fell apart from there. They lost. At one point, they had Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta on the IL, and also their bats just were not there. I mean, aside from Rowdy Tellez and Willie Adames and a little bit of Christian Yelich here and there, their lineup really ran into the same problem as it did last year, and they also failed to pick up a bat during the trade deadline, which is what they needed, which I know that they were in talks to try and get Jock Peterson, but the Giants were kind of in a weird spot where they were kind of, okay, should we contend or should we not contend? And they panicked and decided not to do it after all, thinking they had a chance. Also, trading Hader, I think that ultimately deflated the clubhouse because of how much Hader means to that ball team. I think it was the right move ultimately. As much as I loved Hader during his time here, it ultimately was the right move. He's got like 2 years of team control left, and he'll be able to cash in big at free agency. He also is starting to look a little bit human too, as of late, before the Brewers trade him, before he completely collapsed in San Diego. Although he's starting to get it back now after regaining the closer's job, but ultimately, I think it was the right move. They had to do it. They weren't going to extend him, and they got Taylor Rogers, who's not Hader, but still he gets the job done. And they really want Devin Williams to really turn into a closer, which kind of has been a mixed bag as of late.
Scott, your opinion on the Brewers?
But you know, Eric, everything you say is completely accurate. I think the only thing where you really lose with the Hader situation is you have a clubhouse presence, and I don't think that anybody can downplay the significance of a clubhouse presence. You know, I realize this pitching was on the decline a little bit, but you know, you lost a lot of character players this year. Lorenzo Cain, obviously his play was declining a little bit as well, but you know, what can I tell you? I've been around this game for so many years. You need a strong clubhouse presence. You do. And even though Ryan Braun retired a couple of years ago, he still even gave you that clubhouse presence as well. So It is what it is. I think Milwaukee needs to make sure that they determine, are we still going to be contenders? Or are we going to subsequently be in decline and start tearing it apart and rebuilding it? And I hate to say rebuilding because it seems too common these days with a lot of teams. But, the Brewers need to really figure out where they're at. I think Craig Counsell is a dynamite manager. He really is. If he were to ever be let go by the Brewers, let me tell you, the phone will be ringing off the hook to get him. David Stearns is a really good general manager, but they have to collectively determine what direction they're going to go. And again, I'll reiterate one last time, okay, losing clubhouse presence is so invaluable. In fact, I even wondered whether there was a puncher's chance whether Jesus Aguilar would rejoin the Brewers. We saw what he did in Miami, where, he was a clubhouse presence. The Marlins got him in the playoffs in 2020 with the pandemic, but Jesus landed with Baltimore. So that's where I'm at with the Brewers.
So the Brewers right now are 2 games out of the wild card. And what I'm going to say about the Brewers is the Brewers are a small market team. We don't have anybody big name like your Juan Soto's, your big maker players that are making big time salaries. Therefore, they rely on the gel of the team and the nucleus of everybody liking to play together. Clubhouse to them makes a difference. And when they've lost a lot of big clubhouse guys this year, that's really hurt them. And yes, everything you said, Eric, about, the injuries, the bats weren't there and they were slumping. And then the pitching woes, injuries came about, and that made it even worse.
Well, let me point this out, though. When you lose a Mike Moustakas, who was a good clubhouse guy, and then, they did add Andrew McCutchen, so I thought that was a nice pickup, too. So, he moved around a little bit. I think he found a good spot there. But Mike Moustakas is a really big clubhouse guy. And the list goes on and on. Those guys are hard to replace. Go ahead.
Well, I think Moose left like after the 2019 season. So Moose has been gone. They managed to do just fine last year, winning 95 games and the NL Central. So they managed to do that. I think and they managed to also do it. Well, they made do with a bad offense, but part of that was you had 3 all-star caliber pitchers. Corbin Burns, Freddie Peralta had a career year that year. And Woodruff, although the record won't say it, the guy just could not get run support. But still, you look at his ERA, it's sparkling like Lake Michigan. But the Brewers' biggest problem has been their offense. I think, on a positive note, I think Garrett Mitchell can be that guy in center field. So far he showed some promise, and I know it's a short sample size, but he's got But Garrett Mitchell has shown he's got power. He's a terrific out. I think he's going to be a good outfielder. But also, they were relying on the $33 million a year man, Christian Yelich, to be that guy to kind of keep the boat together, as well as Corbin Burns and also Brandon Woodruff. Basically, those core guys, which their core is ultimately their pitching staff, to keep the clubhouse together. Well, part of it is it didn't work out that way because nobody anticipated Brandon Woodruff getting hurt for as long as he did. I think Freddie going down did not help. So there's 2 arms right there. And then also, it also doesn't help that, Yelich is just not the same player that he used to be. He is not that guy where you bat number 3 in the lineup or where it doesn't really matter where you bat him these days. But that guy who's going to bring in the RBIs, I mean, yeah, he's had his moments, but the guy's become a $33 million a year leadoff hitter, which is going to put the Brewers in a hole for a while. They have signed that long-term contract, so they're stuck with them for better or worse because there's no way they can trade him.
Well, Eric, you make a valid point that Moustakas, they were able to win last year without him, but that's just 1 year. Well, yeah, when you look at a player, okay, and you're able to get by with 1 year. But I look at the loss of players, Eric and Candy, over a 2, 3, 4 year period of time is what I do. Moustakas is one everywhere you go. So, I see your point. It's a very, very valid point, Eric, but they're talking 1 year. You wonder, had they have signed him to a longer term contract? We don't know. And yes, you are right, Eric. $33 million leadoff hitter to me is a very expensive leadoff hitter. And you got to wonder what kind of support he has in the lineup. So you make a lot of valid points. I give you that.
Well, it's not like the Brewers just let him walk walk down the street and not even pursue him. They tried to get him. They fought tooth and nail that offseason to try and bring him back. Unfortunately, the Reds he decided to go to Cincinnati, and where he had some productive years, although not nearly as productive as they were, but still a productive player there. But the biggest problem for them is also what we're overlooking here. Besides Hader is, as great as Hader was, that bullpen aside from Devin Williams was not what it was last year, where around the sixth, seventh inning, around the seventh inning or sixth inning, whatever it might be, where I could turn to a Jake Cousins or somebody else to shut it down. It was just not there this year. Granted, Cousins went down, but they got Trevor Gott thinking he could be that guy. And he wasn't that guy. Part of it was he was hurt, but Trevor Gott was another one of those project pitchers that David Stearns likes to bring in and typically gets some production out of him. Like what Jake Cousins did last year for the Brewers, who was their unsung hero and toward the middle innings. But their issue this year was that bullpen was not a shut it down pen in the middle innings like it was all last year. Yes, Devin was great and was an all-star and really should have been off the vote prior to somebody going down. But it takes, as they say, it takes a village to get to the closer, and it seems like the village. I wouldn't say it was deflating. I wouldn't say the bullpen was that bad. It wasn't like what the Phillies was for much of the first half, but it just wasn't dominant. It was serviceable, good, borderline good, but not great or dominant like what it did last year in getting the Brewers the NL Central pennant.
Well, let's face it. Christian Yelich right now is leading the Brewers in batting average, and his batting average is 261. Not anybody over 300, not everybody over 275. It's hard to win a lot of games when you're not even batting 270. 275, that's 250. He's just over 250. So that means that one out of every 4 times he comes up to the bat, he's getting a hit. But if they're not stringing those together and he's the only one doing it, they're not going to win. And let's face it, the teams that are ahead of them got better with the trade deadline. They made big trades, got big name players, and bolstered their already good lineups. The Padres are ahead of them. Obviously, look at the year the Cardinals are having. That's tough. The Dodgers, the Mets, they're all having really, really good years.
What's funny about the Brewers was when they made the Hader deal, they were in first place at the time. They were I wouldn't say a sizable lead, but they were still, heading into the latter part of July, heading into August with a lead in the NL Central, which is where you want to be. And they were doing like obviously just fine. But the thing about it is the Brewers the biggest problem they had, the biggest mistake they made was they did not add a bat. I know they were trying for Jock Peterson, but the biggest problem that they did was they didn't have a backup plan in case Peterson fell through, because knowing that the San Francisco Giants were a middle of the road team at that point that could either contend or just opt to just cut their losses and get ready for 2023.
And Eric, who do you blame for that?
I got to blame Stearns. I really do. As much as I like David Stearns, as much as a great GM he has been for them and has got them to where they've been, Stearns did not have a backup plan in case Peterson fell through. There were other batters available. I get you're not going to get Juan Soto, because you basically have to mortgage the farm for that and then get them to come over, along with more than likely Willie Adames or Rowdy Tellez. But if they were to make that move happen, which it wasn't going to happen. But the thing about it was they could have pursued a David Peralta, who's been who's been productive with who's been very productive with the Rays so far. And as well as this year, they could have gone after I know it wouldn't have really made sense to go after another first baseman, but they could have brought in Daniel Vogelbach, who's had kind of a resurgence with the Pirates and has been productive with the Mets. They could have done it because they would essentially have to give up, maybe a mid-level prospect, knowing how the Pirates do business over there. But the fact of the matter is they failed to add a bat, and that was their biggest downfall. Omar Narvaez. He is not the same as what he was last year. The guy seems like he's an automatic ground ball waiting to happen or a strikeout, kind of like what Jackie Bradley Jr. was last year, which I'm still shocked that the Red Sox traded Hunter Renfroe for JBJ. I'm still shocked by it because JBJ, great defensive player, but he's only had like one good hitting year where he batted 300.
Okay, go ahead.
But the fact of the matter is, Stearns really knew he needed a bat. Yeah, you could still get the Hader deal done. You could have worked that out during the week and maybe pursued a bat, but Stearns failed there, and now the Brewers are at a middle of the road like the Giants. What do we do?
I agree, Scott. What do you think? Whose fault was it?
Well, you obviously have to go with the general manager. He's the one pulling the trigger on the trades. What else is going to do? Craig Counsell doesn't make trades. All he does is, Stearns is shopping for the groceries, and it's up to make sure that Craig Counsell is using them properly and making the right dishes, and that's really what it comes down to. Eric is 100% online all the way.
So one last question about the Brewers: do they make the playoffs, Eric?
No, they're not gonna. That club, whatever fight that they had, yeah, they're leading the Cardinals right now 2-0. Last I looked, but I don't think they'll make it. The pen isn't what it used to be. Freddie Peralta's back on the IL with that shoulder. They're gonna Brandon Woodruff, productive. Yeah, he's been productive. Yeah, you still have Corbin Burns, but that offense has literally no fight. The bullpen's not the slam the door pen like it was last year, and I just feel as though that the Hader trade is what really did them in. And also, it's pretty much their offense this year has either been a home run or not. And that's not a way to win games. You have to get guys who can hit for contact, get on base, and then set up the power guys to do something. And the Brewers they don't put traffic on the bases. It's either they hit a home run or they don't.
Scott, do they make the playoffs?
Well, they can make the playoffs if San Diego has an epic collapse. They're only talking a couple of games, so I wouldn't rule it out. But the only thing I can say about Josh Hader is the clubhouse presence I mentioned earlier in the show. But I'd say if you're only a couple of games out, it's not a lot of ground to make up. I like the way you said home run or not, because everybody in Milwaukee can associate Rob Deere with that classification. Either hit him out or he didn't hit him at all. He usually led the league in strikeouts, but I don't think Rob Deere walk in that door. To answer Kansi's question, I wouldn't rule it out. If San Diego lays an egg and they collapse, yeah, it's very possible they could. They're not catching the Cardinals in the division, though.
They're not catching the Cardinals. Let's see. They're playing the Cardinals right now. Their next opponents: Yankees, Mets, Reds, Cardinals, Marlins, and Diamondbacks. That's what they have left on the lineup.
It's not a bad schedule. It isn't.
It's not.
Not horrible.
It's not horrible, but we'll see. I mean, we haven't been playing good against, Reds. Who knows what we'll do?
When you're dropping series to the Reds, to a sticks and stones Reds team, and those are like give me series, as well as you're dropping series to other teams that you really on paper should be able to beat. You're not going to go to the postseason. Even if you do go to the postseason, I don't see the Brewers getting out of the wild card. I really don't. I see it being if they make it that far, and the wild card is their ceiling right now. If they make it that far, they're going to get swept because I just don't see the offense putting it together. Their offense last year was inconsistent at best, but this year, I mean, it didn't help that Hunter Renfroe, who was supposed to be like a big bat for them that they added, who was supposed to kind of jumpstart the lineup, was out for a decent amount of the year, but he, has been productive. But, that didn't help. but still, you need more than just home run power. You got to get guys on base. You need guys who can hit contact, and you need guys who can do more than just hit home, who do more than can just hit. Perhaps maybe with the shift being gone, it'll help the offense, but that remains to be seen.
Right. It'll be interesting if that plays any role in the remaining.
Well, the reality is the question is, will they make the playoffs? And I think they have a puncher's chance. Now, if you were to ask me the question, did I think they get far in the playoffs? That's a different story, because I think you're definitely right, Eric. Unless you have enough offensive firepower, you're going to struggle. I don't care what anybody.
What I got to say is the baseball season is a long season. Now, if the right team gets hot, could they win? Could they go further in the playoffs? Of course, any team could, but they got to get hot at the right time, and they got to fire on all cylinders, all aspects of the game. Pitching's got to be there, bats got to be there. So if all of that, would wake up and do great, then yeah, maybe. But the likelihood is, I don't see it. I'm hoping a playoff, but I don't even know if they'll make the playoffs at this point.
Well, all I can tell you is that when they face the Miami Marlins, I predict a low-scoring series, because neither of them can hit themselves out of a paper bag. So
I guess it would depend. It's going to depend on what pitching it comes down to, like who's lining up with who. Do we draw Sandy and Pablo or who?
Right.
I mean, the Marlins are. I mean, obviously, I don't think, despite this year, I don't see Counsell going anywhere. He knew that. I'm sure he was there when Stearns was like, I want to make this. I have to make this move to trade Hader. I'm sure he was there. I mean, there's no way you let the guy go, because if he's let go, I can guarantee you a chance to hire Craig Counsell, who's proven to do a lot with a little. If let's just say 29 other teams fire their managers, not realistic, but let's just say hypothetically all teams fire their managers, Counsell's going to get an interview request from each and every one of them.
Yeah, well, not only that, he's number one, he's not going anywhere. He's a Wisconsin kid who's had success. I think he's the all-time winningest manager in Brewers history. He ain't going nowhere. So any of this speculation, in my opinion, some I don't buy into.
He also guided them through the rebuild the first time around, if the Brewers go that route. So he's clearly done this before, and he knows how to get the most out of guys. But what it comes down to is, that club also needs more from Yelich. He's making $33 million, and they were expecting him to be the presence, I think, that he can be to kind of guide these guys and put them in position to have success. But so far, I don't think he has been that guy. And right now, if I'm Stearns right now, and as well as the ownership of the Brewers, I'd be mad that I'm paying $33 million for a leadoff hitter.
Yeah, but generally speaking, though, Eric, when a small market invests big into a particular player, it's hard to have that secondary player you can pay a lot, and that's where their resources are tapped, because of the uneven nature of television contracts and the sport climate. Whereas if I know we're going to talk about Packers momentarily, the playing field's a lot more even in the NFL than we know in MLB. So right. I remember when they had that debate where you keep Braun or you keep Prince Fielder. Well, one had to go because they couldn't afford him. So it's either A or B, and you hope you don't get it wrong. And it's just the way it is. So you have to certainly realize, can they afford a lot more talent when you paid a lot of money out to a particular individual? And then number two, when you have a long-term contract of say 8 to 10 years, how much productivity can you expect on the back end? And that's another story. Albert Pujols, Miguel Cabrera, those weren't very good long-term contracts. They might give you immediate productivity for a while, but then they generally don't work out. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
The Tigers did that deal is because they wanted to see Miguel Cabrera hit all his milestones in Detroit. That's why they did it. That's the same reason why the Rangers signed Adrian Beltre for all that money, although Adrian Beltre was productive for a majority of that contract. But they just wanted to see him hit the milestones. He'd put the butts in seats, and then he'd ride off into the sunset, more than likely as a Hall of Famer with the Tigers.
Yeah, but the Tigers made that deal for Prince Fielder. I believe Victor Martinez went down with a serious injury, if I remember right. So They wanted to get another bat, so they had help from him in the lineup. The milestones came later as time went on, and he still had to deal with a myriad of injuries there. And so when I look at that situation, Victor Martinez, I think, went down with a serious knee injury, and to be able to get Prince Fielder to Detroit, they had Cecil Fielder many years ago. I thought it was a good short-term move for him, but ultimately Prince Fielder, he got hurt, and as a result, his career came to a quick halt as the wear and tear took place.
Right, because these guys, it's a long year. That's why I argue that baseball is the hardest sports season, because it is such a long year. It's a grind. You've got to be productive night in and night out with a day off here and there. It's not like the NFL where you'll have a practice I believe on Tuesday. Well, depending on the schedule, obviously, with Thursday night football. It kind of complicates things. I don't know what it is now, but let's just go typical Sunday. Sunday, you get the day off on Monday. And then, you come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, day off Friday. And then, there's some time to heal. Baseball, there is no time to really heal.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you go to Tribune South, and that's Tribune South or Tribune on Twitter, on my pinned tweet, we have a show that we had done about the hardest championship to win. We would encourage you to go out there and check it out. And that'll kind of reinforce what we're doing here. But I don't know, we won't get into that tonight, but go to Twitter, and then
here's also the thing about baseball too, is like the NFL. The NFL is designed for you to go 7-9, 9-7. It's designed for you to go 500. And they obviously do a lot. Obviously, a salary cap balances out, so there's not those long dynasties that we saw with the Steelers of the 70s, the Niners in the 80s, and obviously the Cowboys in the 90s. The league's a little more balanced. Anybody, it doesn't matter the market size, anybody can win a Super Bowl. Heck, the Packers managed to, I believe the Packers have won multiple, and they play in probably the tiniest market ever for sports. But baseball, it's not like that. Baseball, it's pretty much haves and haves nots. I mean, the big market teams like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and others are going to have a lot more with their media market and the money that they make there. And that's why they're able to go to the playoffs year in, year out. The reason, teams like the Rays, who play in just a dumpster of a stadium, as well as in a dumpster of a neighborhood, but that's another story for another day. They can only do so much. And a lot of these teams, including the Brewers, have to survive on the team-friendly contracts with these players and get the most out of them before they hit the open market.
Well, the Kansas City Royals had a good run for a couple of years and got a world championship out of it. I think they got to the World Series twice and pulled one out of there. So I agree with you. These smaller market teams have a hard time sustaining success here, but it's interesting to talk about.
Okay, guys, let's reel this in and let's change topics. So let's switch from the Brewers. Let's go an hour north, Eric, and let's go up to Camp Randall and the Wisconsin Badgers. Thoughts that they started out the year really strong. They went down. They fell this last week. They were ranked 19th. Now they're out of the top 25. Let's talk about where they're headed and what you're seeing from the Badgers.
Well, it wasn't Graham Mertz this time around. Last year it was, the talk was quarterback play, but Graham Mertz actually did all that he could. He had that team in position to win. He did his part. Problem was they couldn't hold the ball. A lot of it was self-inflicted wounds with the fumbles and stuff. And you can't blame Mertz for that. He threw the ball to the tight end's hands, and he takes it, and then he loses the ball, especially on the interception, which was just downright deflating. But it was not. I can't put this one on Mertz because he did enough for them to win. Problem was his receivers need to hold the ball, and that was their biggest issue last year, and it seems like it's plaguing them this year. Their first game of the year was against an FCS opponent in Illinois State, which they won, as they should, 30-0. Illinois State came up from normal, got paid somewhere in the low millions to get absolutely tatered by a Big Ten Division I team. But they I think it's a wake up call for the Badgers that hey, these teams are here to compete. It's not the Pac-12 just because they're about to lose USC and UCLA doesn't mean they're going to stop competing. I think I think part of it was the inexperience of that team because that team is much younger this year. Defensively, I think they're going to be great. I think Jim Leonard has them playing at a high level, but offensively, they got to figure out how to take care of the football because a lot what they did last weekend, they had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and Graham Mertz did enough, but you can't just expect him to be the guy that throws the football as well as holds the football.
Scott, any thoughts on the Wisconsin Badger game?
Yeah, I'll keep my comments short and straight to the point. Like Eric mentioned it, Illinois State, I think they're the Redbirds, I believe.
Yeah.
So they're an FCS team. So to me, it was nothing more than a tune-up game. And I like to characterize those types of games like organized scrimmages, okay? But they count. Now, you bring in Washington State, even though they may not be a higher echelon school in the Pac-12, it's still a Power 5 school is what it is. And in my opinion, Power 5 schools, can compete against Power 5 schools, Pac-12, Big Ten. That's how it's always been. So I think Wisconsin has a lot of good game film to look at. Okay. They knew it went right against an inferior opponent with Illinois State. And then when they went to another state called Washington State, they have some film. And if I were them, I would turn that negative into a positive and hope and pray that you can learn from those mistakes and get better in week 3. That's pretty much all I have to say on this, Candy and Eric. You guys can take it from there.
So I'm going to go through some of the stats of the game. So let's go through it. Rushing, we ran for 174 yards. They ran for 53. Passing, we passed for 227. They passed for 200. Total yards, 401 to 253. But where I think we really, and I agree with you, Eric, self-inflicted, we had 11 penalties for 106 yards. And I believe, I might be wrong, but I thought all of those penalties were on offense.
They were. I mean, once again, self-inflicted wounds. I mean, obviously I was pointing out the fumbles, which were huge because Wisconsin had drives going. Graham Mertz had them where they needed to be. And then they can't hold the ball, which was a big problem for them last year. And the turnovers, the penalties really got them, especially those little penalties like false starts and here and there. Those are momentum-killing things. I mean,
I was going to say they're drive killers. Yep.
Yes, I understand the offensive line is new and they're still trying to kind of get the pieces together. I mean, I think it's going to be, I think they're going to be fine there because, Bob Bostad for the much of the 2000s put together some really good offensive lines during that time, which is what Wisconsin's known for. But what the penalties are what really got them. I mean, let's be honest. They got a 3-headed monster of running backs, and Wisconsin loves to run the ball. So what are teams going to do? They're going to load the box. It's just a fact. So that means the offensive line has to be near perfect in order for them to really move the ball. It also will set up the pass game better, where Graham Mertz can go play action and throw it up to Marcus Allen or throw a little dig to Skylar Bell or Clayton Cundiff, who's been coming on as of late. But the fact is though, like, they got to figure out this penalty thing because it was a big problem for them last year, and then they also have to figure out, they have to figure out the offensive line as well as getting guys on the same page because they were just out of whack during week 2. I mean, week one against Illinois State was a time for all that to happen where it would be less consequential. But they're not going to be playing FCS all year. This is D1 football where everybody has an opportunity to try and get to the playoffs, especially since it's expanded to 12 teams for better or worse.
So their next opponent is New Mexico State.
Yeah, they'll win.
But after that, they're on the road. They open the Big Ten season on the road at Ohio State.
Boy, it's amazing. That schedule here, think about it. Illinois State, Washington State, New Mexico State, Ohio State. My goodness, the Badgers are, in a state of, we got to figure this out. So how many other states we have? At least 4 games we're leading off with states. I can't remember the last time that's happened.
Well, I'd like to expect them against a team like New Mexico State, which to them 7-5 is a great year, but or 6-6 for that matter. I'd like to think it's the type of game where they get their stuff together. They figure out it's going to be a practice for them. They hold on to the ball, and as well as they get their offensive line under control and the offense on the same page before the consequences really start happening, where they start dropping the ball backed up behind their goal line. But I think New Mexico State's going to be a good rebound, good head check, good to get them situated. I think they're ultimately going to win that game, no doubt, because that team has been a mess for a very long time. I just think that, it's going to be a great tune-up game. Ohio State, do I see them winning against them? No, because Ohio State is more than likely going to be able to contend for a national championship this year. And this year, Wisconsin is going to the Shoe. Nobody wins at the Shoe. Ohio State's been winning there for a long time. Wisconsin hasn't won at the Shoe since, I believe, 2004, when I was in fourth grade. And that was back when Jim Tressel was the head coach. They're not winning at the Shoe. I mean, as of late, they do not do well against Ohio State. Ohio State's too good, and they're more put together than Wisconsin is. And I just don't see it happening. But by some miracle, if some miracle happens, terrific, everybody, the entire state's going to shake. But I don't see it happening. But going forward, though, I think New Mexico State's going to be a good head check, good to kind of get themselves sorted out, rather than, let's just say they lose Ohio. Let's just say they lose a game here, and then let's just say it's an upset. And then they go on the road where they were absolutely reeling, like they did in 2019 after Illinois upset them in Illinois. And then they go to Ohio State and get absolutely shellacked.
So, Eric, I got two questions for you. Number one, do you know the nickname of New Mexico State? Number two, where are they located?
New Mexico State, I believe it's a Cowboy.
No? You know where they're located?
Besides New Mexico?
Yeah, right. No, Montreal.
Oh, I got the mascot. It's an Aggie, but I don't know location.
Yeah, because you're looking it up on your iPad like everybody else does here.
I don't have an iPad.
Or whatever. You got some sort of electronic device there you can look it up, right?
It's an Aggie. Well, my phone, but I'm not looking at my phone.
I'm just kidding with you, Eric. I like to do this. So they're located. They have the New Mexico State Aggies. Okay, I had this on another show last week, so I thought I'd have some fun with it tonight. And they're located in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is like 45 minutes away from UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso. And in fact, I think both of them are going to probably still remain in the Conference USA. Just thought I'd throw that at you.
But it's going to be, I think, and also Jerry Kill, after years of being out of coaching, after leaving Minnesota rather messily, he is back coaching football.
I think it'll be interesting. I think the Badgers can work out some of the problems that they had in this last game. It's probably the game that they need to have right about now. Hopefully it'll be a feel-good game and they'll be able to rebound, and then we'll just see. I mean, yes, Ohio State's always been tough, but there's a reason why we play the games. It's because you never know who might upset who.
Yeah, don't get me started there, Candy, because part of my show tomorrow on the Sports Exchange is going to talk about three major upsets that occurred because of the Sun Belt Conference. I'm not going to go ahead and mention them on the show because I'd like to have Candy at the very end promote what we're going to do tomorrow. We'll have a good Sports Exchange tomorrow. We're going to talk about some upsets tomorrow, but I won't specify the name. So good point, Candace.
So let's take a quick station identification break. Let's talk about you. If you're listening to us, you can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts, but Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify. If you like to see visual, you can find us on South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Please subscribe. You can see all of our different shows. You can always go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. And if you have any questions, comments, if you're watching us live, you can watch us on Facebook and comment in the section. Otherwise, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or to advertise, call 954-304-4941. Well, let's reel it in with our last topic of the night. and that would be opening of the NFL weekend and an all too familiar as of late Packer performance. Starting out the year and what I would call laying a pretty big egg. Eric, your comments about your observations of the game.
Well, they clearly are missing Devontae Adams right now. I think that's for sure. And also, like, the problems in training camp reportedly with the receivers, it came to light here this past weekend against Minnesota. Minnesota also is a different team this year, so there was some of that. They don't really have it on film yet on what they're doing, because the offense is significantly different than what it was under Mike Zimmer. I think now it's a little more modernized because you don't have Zimmer, who's a defensive guy who still thinks that you can run the ball and win and play good defense, where you actually have to have a passing game. But here's the thing, they Rodgers needs to get on the same page with his receivers, because right now, you don't have your veteran guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who not your great receiver, but still a solid guy to have out there who can get open and he can make plays. There is no Devontae Adams, who we all know what Devontae could do. He demonstrated this past weekend what the Packers were missing, and obviously they have to do a lot better on offense, because they were against a Minnesota Vikings team which really hasn't changed a lot defensively. They're still the same as they were last year. I still think they need help in the defensive back department, but the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers has to play better. I mean, yeah, he had this happen to him last year where he turned the ball over where when the hurricane happened in New Orleans, and he apparently has some trouble in Tampa. Not sure what the issue is down there, but but this time around he was in Minnesota, a team he's absolutely feasted on, and he just didn't get it done. I mean, it was like probably I couldn't think of a more poor performance against the Vikings that Aaron Rodgers had in recent memory.
Scott, your thoughts?
Well, the bottom line is the Packers decided not to play Rodgers in the preseason. To me, it looked a little bit rusty, not a game sync, and I don't blame coaches for not putting their quarterbacks in during the preseason. How many times you had season injuries take place, final preseason game of the year? But yeah, and I believe the teams that didn't play a lot of their regulars and starting quarterbacks went 3-8 on opening week. So I don't know what to really put any stock in that. Rodgers didn't help himself out when he kept waffling whether he was going to come back or not. Devontae Adams wanted stability, so he opted to go play with his college teammate Derek Carr over with the Raiders. But the reality is Rodgers was annoyed by the fact that he wasn't getting anything accomplished with these new receivers. Well, you need reps, Aaron. That's all there is to it. You need reps. You got a new supporting cast. Even Alan Lazard, I don't even think played in the game. I know that they brought in Sammy Watkins. I think the jury's still out on him. We know about Randall Cobb, but you don't know about the rest of them, that's for sure. And when Robert Tonyan, I believe, is your head receiver, you got big problems. But we know the running game is going to be pretty good too. So I think the Minnesota Vikings came in prepared, and I think I definitely tell you one thing, I was impressed with what I saw with the Vikings, more so than what I didn't know in week one.
So can I just interject here and say we have 10 of our guys are already on the injured list. One of them is Tanyan. One of them is Lazard. We have 2 offensive linemen, Bakhtiari, who they're not sure he's going to be back. Jenkins is hurt. And we have a couple others that are hurt. So I'll be honest, I did not see the beginning of the game, so I did not see on the first drive, but I've heard and read about it that our new rookie dropped what would have been a touchdown pass, which would have started the game off a little bit different. When we only score once and we would have scored a second time. Now, I heard Rodgers interviews and stuff like that, and he's not going to blame one drop pass because drop passes happen. But what I'm going to say is, and I'm very consistent with this, I understand Rodgers doesn't play in the preseason, but then he always starts slow, especially when you're talking as many new receivers as he's throwing to. They're not used to game playing with Rodgers.
Right.
There's a lot to be said about that. Now, one game does not make the whole season. We laid an egg last year, and we had Devontae Adams in that first game. So is it something we should be concerned about? No, but we have to have a way to overcome all these injuries too, because, you have two offensive linemen out. And last year we were rotating offensive. If I remember last year, almost every game we had a different line trying to, on the offensive side. It makes a difference.
Well, here's also another. Just
hold on one second, Eric. I never said, Candy, that they had anything to be concerned about. It's a wake-up call. You have 17 games. Put this other one in your rearview mirror, and then you move on. Sorry, Eric. Go ahead. I just want to get that out there.
Here's something else that I'd be concerned about if I was the Packers this past week. Their leading receiver was A.J. Dillon, who caught 5 balls for 46 yards, a running back. That can't happen. I mean, they also didn't really run the ball a whole lot to begin with in that game, and they let Aaron Rodgers. They pretty much were trying to get Aaron Rodgers to air it out, which he only threw for 34 yards. But problem was, they didn't really have the ball very long because Minnesota knows the game plan, which is to keep Rodgers on the sideline for as long as possible. So Minnesota played a little ball control, and also I think Minnesota too was excited. They got a breath of fresh air with Kevin O'Connell, thanks to Mike Zimmer, who I personally think he overstayed his welcome. As great of a coach as he was for the Vikings, I think he overstayed his welcome toward the end. But also, I wouldn't panic. I mean, we saw Rodgers just have an absolutely blunder of a game where he threw 2 interceptions against the Saints and no touchdowns, and just had an awful all-around game against them. But I don't want to go into week 1 panic mode where we do overreactions and things like that, because it's only 1 week, and the season really, and there's still a lot of season left where the Packers can get together. But the fact of the matter remains, I think to Aaron Rodgers' benefit to come out for maybe a series or two in the preseason where he kind of gets on the same page with his new receivers, I think would have been beneficial, where he does like 1, maybe 2 drives here and see what works and see what doesn't. But at least Aaron Rodgers, I mean, yeah, the receivers, but the receivers get it. These guys are pros. They know they have to be better. But the fact of the matter remains, Aaron Rodgers has to kind of turn up. I think he has to turn up the heat too. I mean, he kind of has, but clearly whatever he was doing at camp did not translate to when they faced the Vikings this past weekend in Minnesota. So, but it's only week 1. Remember, Aaron Rodgers lost week 1 last year, and then the Packers went on a 7-game win streak, and all was well with planet Earth. But the reality being, these receivers got to step it up, because you can't have A.J. Dillon being your leading receiver.
Well, let me point something out. When the Packers won their last Super Bowl, didn't they win it with a 10-6 record? Right?
They did.
Yeah. So they won it with a 10-6 record, right? And you finish 13-3. Everybody's expecting you to do it again. They don't do it. So you know what? We've seen teams win with 9 Super Bowls with 9-7 records, 10-6. Right. Okay. So I'm wondering whether Aaron Rodgers will patent the word relax because of what he had done a few years ago, and people are panicking. But
I'm not.
9-7 and 10-6. Well, they won't now because you have 17 games, but they've won it with 10 wins. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and be the overreactionary type of the Packers. They're too good of an organization. They're run real well. They have a certain thing, and you know what? Everybody wants to put them on TV. I've always thought, in my own opinion, that the Green Bay Packers are America's team, and I'll still believe that. Everybody wants to beat the Packers action. I'll even throw another nugget at you guys. London will be glad to have them this year when they're forced to go there because they added the 17th game where they had to go. But nobody ever wanted to give up that Packers home game because they knew that was going to put a lot of jingle coin in their pocket. So, yeah, I don't think the Packers got nothing to worry about. They do need to get in sync, but they had that problem a year ago. I don't know if the talent level is high, but you got a bunch of young pups there that'll hopefully get into their groove and ultimately mature, hopefully by within a couple of weeks, so that they can at least make a good playoff run. And remember, they lost to a good Minnesota team. It's not like they lost to a team that only won 2 or 3 or 4 games last year. So don't forget that either.
I mean, they were. I wouldn't panic after week 1. I mean, maybe after, I'd probably say 4 or 5 weeks in, and the Packers are still kind of out of mojo, then I would start. But remember, the Packers have started slow before, and then we've seen Aaron Rodgers just go on an absolute tear. He has a not very good Chicago Bears team next week, and I think he'll be able to put it together then. I mean, that'd be a good game for him to really put it together, because to tell you the truth, the Bears are going to finish more than likely in last. I don't see them doing it this year. They're in rebuild mode. They just flipped back from the 3-4 to the 4-3, and it's a good opportunity for Rodgers to really start getting on the same page with these guys.
Well, not only that, everybody seems to say that he owns the Bears, right, Candy? So,
he does.
Good luck. So, everybody was jumping on Trey Lance's. They were hammering him during this past week. Trey Lance against Justin Fields. So go ahead, Ken.
So interestingly enough, it will be the Packers' home opener. It is Sunday night. It is the oldest rivalry in the NFL, Packers-Bears. So let's say, and I don't know who made out this schedule we start the season playing 2 divisional opponents. I'm hoping that they get it back together. The one thing I could say that might, influence the game, let's say it's a game like Chicago just played, the weather. They had so much rain down in Soldier Field that they were, they were running and
looked like Lake Michigan. Looked like Lake Michigan out there.
It did. And I know there have been some parts of Wisconsin that got 8-9 inches of rain lately. So they're kind of soaked.
94 back to Madison, and I think also 94 back to Madison even got flooded. They shut down that highway. Thank God I didn't have to take it, but still.
Exactly. So I think it'll be interesting. One of the things that I noticed that even Rodgers had commented that there were a couple of times that maybe he could have ran for a yard or 2. Like he was -1 in rushing yards. Not that I'm expecting Rodgers to go out and run like a Lamar Jackson or anything like that, but on 4th and 1, if you're open, take it. And I think he even said that they just seemed off a little bit. All of them missed some plays that, if you're going up against a good team that obviously was prepared and pumped and wanted to play, new coach, and Minnesota's a good team and they've been improving. They've got some good weapons. Safety wise, we didn't do it, letting Jefferson, he caught 184 yards, I think he had. We need to change that. Like that just can't happen.
Defensively, they supposedly have one of the top 3 cornerbacks in the league in Jair Alexander, but right now, Justin Jefferson, great wide receiver. He's gonna be great. I mean, he's probably gonna. I think when it's all said and done, he could be up there with Moss in Minnesota. But right now, you at least gotta defend. You at least gotta figure out a way to defend him. I get you're not gonna completely shut him down because the guy's just that good. He's like once in a generation player. But you gotta find a way to make some plays on him and not let him take over the game like he did. Because so far he made the Packers defensive backs look like defenseless backs.
Well, didn't Devontae? I believe Devontae had 10 catches for 140 yards. He had almost as many catches as the whole Packer team.
He did. Despite the loss, though, him and Derek Carr are in sync on that Raiders offense, and that Raiders offense is going to be fun to watch. Yeah, they couldn't pull it out. They couldn't get it done toward the end because they couldn't. They could have gone either way with the 2-point conversion, but they didn't get the stops they needed. So there was the game right there. But that Raiders offense is going to be fun to watch, especially with when you have Darren Waller, you have Hunter Renfrow, and Devontae Adams now. But yeah, Devontae Adams, he clearly was that receiving game last year. There's a reason he caught 100+ balls every year for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And I think ultimately though, Adams leaves Green Bay anyway. Even let's just say Aaron Rodgers says, "Hey guys, I'm coming back." I think he ultimately leaves anyway because they were already having trouble, even with Rodgers around, having trouble extending him. So so him going to the Raiders is really not a shock to the system, as people and maybe off the glance, because even with Rodgers there and things were going all right prior to him becoming a little disgruntled, they were having some trouble extending him. They really were. They tried to get it done before the contract expired, and they couldn't get it done. And I think when all that was going on, that led to Rodgers being kind of what he is now, which is basically making it look like like one of the Desperate Housewives on TV.
Well, and what I would say, one piece of advice, not that Aaron Rodgers is going to watch this broadcast, but one of my pieces of advice to him would be, you target a receiver, and let's say he drops like Christian Watson did. You don't go back to him for a long time. Well, what is he doing? That leaves all that time between the next time you target him. He's thinking, "Oh gosh, I screwed up. What, and he's playing that play over and over and over. Throw the ball back to him. The next player, a play or two after that, he's going to catch it. Especially on a young receiver, you got to keep them engaged and back in the game and build his confidence. Don't let him dwell on the negativity."
Oh, Aaron Rodgers, the one thing I've always knocked Aaron for was the guy just does not give guys around him confidence. I'll bring up an example. Steve Young, well into his career by the time Terrell Owens came into the league when the catch 2 happened against, ironically enough, it was against Green Bay. And Steve Young, despite Terrell Owens having his problems with the drops all day long, the guy could not catch anything like no tomorrow, including screen passes. Steve Young kept going to him, and Terrell's like, I saw the interview. Terrell's all bad, feeling bad, like, sorry, blah blah blah, I screwed up. And Steve Young's like, Terrell, if you're open, you'll get the ball. And he throws it to him, and boom, the catch 2 happens, and which ironically enough was against Brett Favre's Packers.
Well, guys, this has been real fun. So let's round the horn. Let's make a prediction for the Packers Bears game, score included. Eric.
I think Green Bay does pull it out. I really believe it was just that they're going to get it together. We've seen Aaron Rodgers do this before. He starts slow and then he goes. I remember a couple years ago against back in 2019 against the Bears. That game was such a disaster offensively for both teams, but still Aaron Rodgers got his team to the NFC Championship that year. Make what you will of the result. He still got them back to the playoffs. I ultimately think they're going to beat the Bears. I mean, Green Bay just has had the Bears number at Lambeau Field. The last time the Bears won there was 2015, where the Bears, with a John Fox-led Bears, I might ask, somehow pulled it off. I don't know. I'm still in shock that happened, that they broke up the pass and Aaron Rodgers had him at the goal line and the Bears somehow pulled it off that Thanksgiving night. But I think Aaron Rodgers ultimately gets it done, and I'm going to go 31-3.
Okay,
Scott, your prediction.
Well, I'm going to give Green Bay the nod, but I need a little more time to see that offense gelling because they didn't really get a lot of reps in. I'll give Green Bay the nod, but I'm going to give them 21-16 in favor of the Packers.
See, and I was going to go 2017 Packers. Imagine that. So we all think the Packers are going to do it. Eric thinks our defense is going to really light it up and hold them to only 3, right?
Well, the defense.
I'm sorry, Eric. I'll give the Packers more than 21 points maybe in week 3 or 4, but I need a little bit more on the eye test. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, against the Vikings.
Tampa Bay.
against the Vikings, though, the Packers defense really, aside from Justin Jefferson, though, and Justin Jefferson seemed like the only guy who was able to really do much of anything there. against everyone else, they really were not that bad. I thought for week one, that's the second year they're in their defensive system with I forget his name. I forget his name. He was the Lions 0-16 defensive coordinator, but but really the Packers defense wasn't flat. I mean, yeah, Justin Jefferson was the issue, but really Justin Jefferson was the only guy really doing damage out there. Dalvin Cook, great running back. He had just 90 yards. Any back would beg for that, but this is Dalvin Cook we're talking about. For everyone else, though, they held Thielen to 36 yards. They held KJ Osborne to 14 yards. Thielen really didn't get going in that game, and holding Dalvin Cook to 90 yards rushing, that's pretty good. Because Dalvin Cook really is a great running back. Who he's probably, you could argue, he's the second coming of Adrian Peterson in Minnesota, providing he stays healthy. But overall defensively, they weren't a train wreck like people are making him out to be. It was just that Justin Jefferson gets all the story because he really did have that game. I mean, I wouldn't call him the second coming of Calvin Johnson, but he was just dominant. And Justin Jefferson's a once in a gen receiver. I mean, that's just what those things are going to happen. I mean, Randy Moss used to do it to him all the time.
Yeah, if I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, because I know you, and Candy might know. I believe Justin Jefferson was acquired in that trade with Buffalo, where they traded Stephon Diggs for the draft choice that amounted to turning out to be Justin Jefferson. That's one of those situations where you have a win-win trade for both teams. So Buffalo's made well, and Minnesota has too. And I will say one thing I don't know if I mentioned earlier. The coaching change and the offensive defensive coordinator, I think the Vikings made out well. I think, like you said, Eric, Mike Zimmer did overstay his welcome. It was time to go on. So I'm with you all the way on that.
I mean, I loved Zim when he was in Minnesota. I mean, during his first few years there, he had more wins than Bud Grant had up to that point. That's pretty good. And Bud Grant's probably the greatest Vikings head coach of all time, arguably. And Mike Zimmer, great years, great defenses. But, I wouldn't put the latter part of it all on Zim. Yeah, he kind of wore out his welcome with the team a little bit toward the end. But his biggest downfall was Rick Spielman, who decided to dump all that money at Kirk Cousins, who, really hasn't won a game when it matters yet. And then they had to literally break up the defense because they were in quote unquote cap hell. So I wouldn't put it all on Zim. I mean, but, at the end of the day, I think it was a breath of fresh air because the younger players that they were getting in there did not want to be old school coached like the other guys were during like the beginning and middle years of Mike Zimmer.
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible too, though, Eric and Candy. Mike Zimmer could either land another NFL head coaching job, or I think he'll be highly sought after in the colleges if he chooses to coach. So I agree with you. I don't think you put it all on.
I know.
Years, and you're right. Bud Grant to me is the greatest Vikings coach of all time, hands down.
I know. I know. Deion Sanders has been trying to get him in some sort of capacity over at Jackson State.
Well, he did.
What about Nebraska?
No.
They got
yeah, Mike Zimmer. I think. Now, I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. Did land with Deion Sanders, and I believe he's on his staff. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, he's at least, I don't know what the role is, but he is.
It's the biggest bromance in football. Deion Sanders and Mike Zimmer just absolutely adore each other, despite being the most polar opposite people ever. But Zimmer's like a no bull kind of guy, while Deion's very flashy and flamboyant. And even especially as a player, but
Mike Zimmer is a heck of a football mind, Eric.
Yep,
he has been. He had success in Cincinnati, okay, and he did it right there. So anytime you have a guy like with the Bengals and with the Vikings, Deion Sanders isn't stupid. This guy here is building something decent at Jackson State. When he saw a good football mind, whether they're polar opposite personality, it's about making sure you have a credible guy that's a really good coach, making sure that he can teach the kids. And I think it worked out well. Go ahead.
I mean, it was enough they like each other enough for Zim every once in a while when Deion was on the television networks for Zim to actually call into the show and actually go on the show with Deion, despite Zimmer, like Bill Parcells, just I wouldn't say despises the media, but really isn't really a big fan of the media. Although, and Zim also brings something that I don't think a lot of coaches do anymore, aside from maybe Belichick. Zim is honest and very blunt and forthright on where the team is at. I mean, the guy. Before the Vikings became like what they were toward the end of Zimmer there, the players absolutely adored Zimmer. They liked his hard style. They liked the fact that he coached them hard. And believe it or not, Zim actually did care about him as people. I mean, you saw what happened when Teddy Bridgewater got a cheat shot against the then St. Louis Rams, and Zimmer's out there rushing to his defense, rather, take it what you will, but very viciously. But I think Zim will become a head coach again, or have a senior defensive assistant role, whatever, because Zim really is a great football coach. He just has to be in the right environment. And him and Spielman just were never on the same page there. And I just think that ultimately Spielman kind of did him in there when they took apart the second coming of the Purple People Eaters. And it's unfortunately that's what I think what his undoing was, because prior to that, the players absolutely loved him. It was just the losses were getting to Zim, and I think it was for the better that he left.
Well, they're both gone, so what's the difference? Rich Spielman got fired and Zimmer moved on, and now you have
when you dump all that money into a quarterback who hasn't won much of anything, you deserve to be sitting amongst the fans every Sunday.
Well, guys, this has been a very enjoyable show tonight. I appreciate all the discussions and stuff like that. Let's go around the horn and tell everybody how you can be reached. And Scott, you can preview your show tomorrow night, since I know you've got it prepped. Eric, go ahead and lead us off.
You can follow me on my Twitter at Sports Team News, where I discuss all things sports, especially the NFL, the Yankees, and whatever else comes to mind.
All right, I'll preview my show, Candy, because you do a heck of a job going through all the ways to contact us. Tomorrow night's edition of the Sports Exchange have a really loaded show. I'll get into a couple of the topics. We'll talk about Live Golf will be one of the topics, the upsets that took place over the weekend, and we'll also be talking about the NBA coming down hard on Phoenix Suns owner Robert Sarver. Those are just a few of the things that we're going to talk about, and we'll have another NFL nugget. So tomorrow night's edition of the Sports Exchange will consist of myself, JB Ellis, Rick Curdy, and Jacob Christner. These guys are great to work with, and I look forward to having them on. So what we could show those. Show should have started around after 9 o'clock sometime. I will be appearing on Pundit's Pundit with Jacob Christner beforehand on Sideline Sports. So that's what I've got. Candy, you can go ahead and just give all the information. You do a really phenomenal job with it. And I will tell you, it's been a pleasure in the background watching you take the moderator chair, and you've done an unbelievable job. I am so proud of you. So go ahead, Candy, you take it away.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So you can find all of our broadcasts on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. Please subscribe. We have, like I said, many different shows, anywhere from Inside the Pigskin, talking about college football, NFL football, to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, where we're talking baseball. We have our Fire Up series in Michigan, Florida, Wisconsin, and just a plain fire up, because you never know where we're going to be. Catch us. You never know. We took a trip to Cooperstown. We're going to have some more videos on our Cooperstown trip on the 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. You can look for, if you're interested in Hurricanes, Miami Hurricanes football, we actually have some videos up, some of the post press conferences. And we also have some Inter Miami if you're into soccer. So
don't forget Florida Atlantic University.
Florida Atlantic will be there Saturday night watching in-state rivalry with UCF against the Florida Atlantic Owls. You can find us, obviously, on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. If you like the video side, again, go to YouTube. If you like the audio side, catch us wherever you catch your podcasts. iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify. And if you want to advertise, 954-304-4941. Twitter is at Tribune South. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and watch all kinds of other wonderful broadcasts. Well, tonight, guys, we've had a great time. Hopefully, our Fire Up Wisconsin series can fire up some of our Wisconsin teams. Hopefully they'll have better turnarounds this weekend. That's all, folks. Have a great evening.